was just another ordinary evening in the small town of Oakwood. The kind of place where nothing much ever happened. People went to work, came home, ate dinner, and watched TV. The streets were quiet after dark, with only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Oakwood had about 5,000 people living there, mostly families and older folks who had been around forever. The houses were old, with wooden porches and yards full of fallen leaves this time of year. It was late October, and Halloween was coming up. Kids were talking about costumes, and stores had pumpkins for sale. But for most adults, it was just another week. John Miller was one of those adults. He was 45 years old, a mechanic who fixed cars at the local garage. He lived alone in a small house on the edge of town, right where the road turned into woods. His house was simple, a one-story place with a garage attached, a kitchen, a living room, and one bedroom. John had no wife or kids. He had divorced years ago and didn't date much. His days were the same. Wake up at 6 a.m., make coffee in his old pot, eat toast, go to work, come home around 6 p.m., maybe have a beer, and tinker with his own truck in the garage. That night was no different. He was in the garage, under the hood of his pickup truck, trying to fix a leaky hose. The radio was on, playing some country song about lost love. The light bulb overhead flickered a bit, but John ignored it. He wiped sweat from his forehead with a rag and reached for a wrench outside. The sun had set, and it was getting dark. The woods behind his house were thick with trees, and no one lived close by. John thought he heard something, a crunch of leaves, like someone walking. He stopped and listened. Nothing. Probably a deer. He muttered to himself. Deer were common around there. He went back to work, tightening a bolt. The radio switched to news, something about a storm coming next week, and local events for Halloween. John half listened while he worked. Then, the power went out, the garage light died, and the radio stopped. Everything was black. John sighed. Great, just what I need. He fumbled in the dark for his flashlight on the workbench. He found it and clicked it on. The beam cut through the shadows. He stepped out of the garage door, shining the light around. The yard. Hello? Anyone there? No answer. The wind picked up, blowing leaves across the grass. He walked a few steps toward the woods, thinking maybe a branch had hit a power line. That's when he saw it, a tall shape standing just at the edge of the trees. It was a man, or at least it looked like one. He was big, over 6 feet, wearing dark clothes and a white mask that covered his whole face. The mask was plain, like something from a hardware store, but it looked creepy in the flashlight beam. In his hand, he held a long kitchen knife. The blade catching the light. John froze. Who the hell are you? This ain't funny. His heart started beating faster. The figure didn't say anything. He just stood there. John backed up a step. Get off my property. Then, the man moved fast. He lunged forward, knife raised. John turned to run back to the garage, but he tripped on a tool he had left on the ground. He fell hard, scraping his knee. The man was on him in seconds. John rolled over and swung his flashlight, hitting the man's arm. It made a thud, but the man didn't stop. The knife came down, slicing into John's shoulder. Pain shot through him like fire. "Ah, stop," John yelled. He grabbed the man's wrist, trying to push the knife away. They struggled on the ground, rolling in the dirt. John was strong from his job, but the man was stronger. The knife pushed closer to John's chest. John kicked and punched, landing a hit on the mask. It cracked a little, but the man grunted and stabbed again, this time into John's arm. Blood poured out, warm and sticky. John screamed, loud enough that maybe a neighbor far away could hear, but no one came. The man pulled the knife out and stabbed down again into John's stomach. It hurt so bad John couldn't breathe right. He gasped, trying to crawl away. The man stood up, watching him. John made it a few feet, leaving a trail of blood, before the man grabbed his leg and dragged him back. More stabs into the chest, the neck. John's vision blurred. He thought about his life. how boring it was, how he wished he had done more. Then everything went dark. The killer stood there for a minute, breathing heavy. He wiped the knife on John's shirt and looked around. No lights on in other houses. He grabbed John's ankles and dragged the body into the woods, leaves covering the blood trail. It took a while. The body was heavy, deep in the trees. He left it behind some bushes. Then he walked away, disappearing into the night. The power came back on later, but no one noticed anything wrong yet. Oakwood slept on, unaware that the old nightmare had returned. Sarah Thompson woke up at 5:30 a.m., like she did every weekday. Her alarm clock buzzed on the nightstand, a cheap plastic one she'd had for years. She groaned, turned it off, and sat up in bed. Her bedroom was small, with faded blue wallpaper and a single window overlooking her backyard. The house was old, just like most in Oakwood, with creaky floors and a faint smell of dust. Sarah was 52, and her body ached from years of working long shifts at the hospital. Her dark hair had streaks of gray now, tied back in a messy bun. She rubbed her eyes and shuffled to the bathroom dot in the kitchen. She made coffee in a worn-out machine that gurgled loudly. She ate a piece of toast with butter, sitting at the table with yesterday's newspaper still open to the crossword. She didn't fill it out. She never had time. Outside, the sun was just rising, painting the sky pink over the quiet streets. Sarah's shift at Oakwood General started at 7 a.m., so she got dressed in her navy scrubs, grabbed her keys, and locked the front door. Her car, a 15-year-old sedan, coughed a bit before starting. She drove through town, passing the diner, the hardware store, and kids waiting for the school bus. Everything felt normal. At the hospital, Sarah worked in the emergency room. It was a slow morning. Only a kid with a sprained ankle and an old man with chest pain. She checked charts, gave meds, and chatted with her coworker, Linda, a nurse with bright red hair. "You hear about the town's Halloween party?" Linda asked while they refilled supplies. "They're doing it at the community center." Sarah nodded, but didn't care much. Halloween always made her uneasy. 20 years ago, when she was 32, a masked man had broken into her family's house. She could still see it in her mind, the white mask, the knife, her brother screaming. As he tried to fight back, the man had killed her brother and her parents. Sarah had hidden in a closet, barely breathing, until the police came. They said they shot the killer dead, but Sarah never believed it. She felt he was still out there, waiting. Around noon, Sarah was eating a sandwich in the break room when her phone rang. It was Deputy Mark Evans, a friend from high school who worked for the sheriff. "Sarah, you got a minute?" His voice sounded tight. "Something happened last night. John Miller's dead. Found him in the woods near his house, stabbed. Real bad. Looks like, well, it's bad." Sarah's stomach dropped. The sandwich fell from her hand onto the table. "Stabbed? Like before?" she asked, her voice shaking. Mark paused. "I don't know yet, but there were footprints, big ones, like work boots. I'm at the scene now. Can you come by?" Sarah told Linda she felt sick and left the hospital. She drove to John's house, her hands gripping the wheel hard. The street was blocked with police tape. 2 cop cars sat in the driveway, lights flashing. A small crowd of neighbors stood nearby, whispering. Sarah saw Mark by the garage, talking to another deputy. He waved her over. "It's messy," he said quietly. He showed her a photo on his phone, blood stains on the grass leading to the woods. Found him about 100 yards in. No witnesses. Sarah's heart raced. "It's him, Mark. The man from before." Mark frowned. "Sarah, they killed that guy. You know that." But she shook her head. "I know what I saw." She drove home, her mind spinning. In her living room, she pulled out an old box from under the couch. Inside were newspaper clippings from 20 years ago, yellowed and crinkled. "Mass killer terrorizes Oakwood." One headline read. She stared at a blurry photo of the man in the white mask. Her hands shook as she called her daughter, Emily, who lived in an apartment across town. Emily was 30, a teacher, and didn't believe the old stories much. "Mom, what's wrong?" Emily answered. "Come home tonight." The morning after John Miller's body was found, Oakwood was buzzing, but not in a loud way. It was the kind of quiet buzz where people whispered in the diner or stood in small groups. Outside the post office, everyone had heard about the murder by now. Some said it was a robbery gone wrong. Others thought it was personal, maybe an angry customer from John's garage. But a few older folks remembered the killings from 20 years ago and didn't say much at all. Sarah Thompson barely slept. She sat at her kitchen table, drinking cold coffee, the shotgun still by her side. Emily, her daughter, was upstairs getting ready for work. "Mom, you need to rest," Emily said. Pulling on her coat, she taught math at the high school and couldn't miss class. Sarah shook her head. "Not until we know what's happening." Emily sighed and left, promising to be back by dinner. At 2 p.m. The town hall meeting was called. The building was old, with peeling paint and rows of folding chairs. About 50 people showed up, more than usual for these things. Sarah sat near the back, her hands fidgeting. Mayor Ellis, a thin man in his 60s with a gray mustache, stood at a podium. "Folks, settle down," he said, tapping the microphone. It squeaked, making everyone wince. "We're here to talk about John Miller. Sheriff's working on it, but we need to stay calm." Sheriff Dan Carter stepped up next. He was short, with a round face and tired eyes. "We found John in the woods, stabbed multiple times. No suspects yet, but we're patrolling more. Lock your doors at night." People started talking all at once. Tom Bradley, who owned the hardware store, stood up. He was big, with a loud voice. "This ain't enough, Dan. We need answers." "Was it random?" A woman named Clara, a history teacher at Emily's school, raised her hand. "I heard there was a mask, like the old killer." The room got louder. Some nodded, others rolled their eyes. Sarah couldn't stay quiet. She stood, her voice shaky but clear. "It's him. The masked man from 20 years ago. I saw him then, and I know he's back." The room went silent for a second. Then Tom laughed, a short, barking sound. "Sarah, come on. That guy's dead. Police shot him." "You're scaring people," Clara spoke up. "She's right, though. My dad told me about those killings. It sounds the same." The arguing went on for an hour. Mayor Ellis kept saying, "Calm down." But no one listened. Some wanted to form a neighborhood watch. Others wanted to hire outside help. Sarah just sat back down, feeling alone. After the meeting, a small group stayed behind. Sarah, Tom, Clara, Deputy Mark, and a few others. They stood in the parking lot, the air cold and damp. "We can't wait for the sheriff," Sarah said. "If it's him, he'll kill again." Mark nodded. "I'll get you some gear, radios, flashlights. We'll watch the town ourselves." Tom crossed his arms. "I'm in, but I still think it's some drifter, not a ghost story." Clara agreed to help, too. They planned to meet at Sarah's house that night to organize. Tom drove back to his hardware store alone. It was a small place, cluttered with tools and paint cans. He stayed late to close up, counting cash from the register. It was almost 7 p.m., and the street outside was dark. He heard a noise in the back room, like a box falling. "Who's there?" he called, grabbing a hammer from the counter. No answer. He walked to the back, the floor creaking under his boots. The room was dim, lit by a single bulb. He saw nothing but shelves and crates. Then a shadow moved. Before Tom could turn, the masked man stepped out, knife in hand. The white mask was cracked on one side, but the eyes were black holes, staring. Tom swung the hammer, hitting the man's shoulder. The killer grunted but didn't fall. He lunged, stabbing the knife into Tom's chest. It went in deep, through muscle and bone. Tom gasped, dropping the hammer. Blood soaked his shirt. He stumbled back, knocking over a shelf. Tools crashed to the floor. The killer pulled the knife out and stabbed again, into Tom's stomach. Tom fell to his knees, coughing blood. He tried to crawl, but the killer grabbed his hair and slashed his throat. Blood sprayed across the floor, mixing with sawdust. Tom stopped moving. The killer stood there, breathing slow. He wiped the knife on a rag and walked out the back door, leaving it open. The wind blew in, scattering papers. No one saw him leave. Back at her house, Sarah was checking her shotgun again. Emily was home now, eating a bowl of cereal at the kitchen table. The phone rang. It was Clara, her voice high and scared. "Sarah, Tom's dead. They just found him at the store." Sarah's heart sank. She looked out the window into the dark. The nightmare was growing. The news of Tom Bradley's death hit Oakwood like a heavy fog. By morning, people were locking their doors during the day, something they never did. Sarah Thompson sat in her living room, the curtains drawn. Her shotgun leaned against the couch. Emily was there, sipping tea, her face pale. "Mom, this is real, isn't it?" she asked. Sarah nodded. "I told you, he's back." Emily set her cup down, hands shaking. "I didn't believe you before. I'm sorry." Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. "We'll get through this together." At 10 a.m., a group met at Sarah's house. Clara, the history teacher, was there, along with Deputy Mark Evans and 3 others: Pete, a retired mechanic, Lisa, who worked at the diner, and Greg, a delivery driver. They sat around Sarah's small dining table, cluttered with coffee mugs and a plate of stale cookies. Mark spread out a map of Oakwood. "We need to patrol ourselves," he said. "Police can't cover everything." Clara suggested splitting into pairs to watch the streets at night. Pete grumbled about his bad knee, but agreed to drive around. Lisa said she'd bring food for everyone. Greg just nodded, looking nervous. They talked for hours, repeating the same plans. Sarah kept checking the window, half expecting to see the masked man outside. After the meeting, Sarah and Emily went to the grocery store to stock up. The store was quiet, with flickering fluorescent lights. People whispered in the aisles, glancing over their shoulders. Sarah grabbed canned soup and bread, while Emily picked out cereal. "This feels so normal." "But it's not," Emily said. Sarah nodded. "Keep your eyes open." They paid and left, carrying bags to the car. The parking lot was half empty, the sky gray with clouds. That evening, the group started their patrols. Pete and Greg took the east side of town, driving Pete's old pickup. They passed dark houses and empty streets. Pete chewed tobacco, spitting into a cup. "This is stupid," he said. "Ain't no killer out here." Greg gripped the door handle. "Then who got John and Tom?" Pete shrugged. They turned onto Maple Street, near the park. A streetlight flickered. Greg saw something, a tall figure in the shadows, wearing a white mask. Pete looked. Before Pete could stop, the figure ran toward them. Greg yelled, and Pete hit the gas. The truck lurched, but the killer threw something, a brick. It smashed the windshield, glass shattering inward. Pete swerved, crashing into a mailbox. The killer reached through the broken window, stabbing a knife into Pete's neck. Blood sprayed across the dashboard. Greg screamed, fumbling with the door. He got out and ran, but the killer caught him in 10 steps. The knife went into Greg's back, then his chest. He fell, blood pooling on the pavement. The killer dragged both bodies into the park, leaving the truck smashed. A neighbor saw the wreck and called the police. The next morning, the town was in chaos. The crashed truck was on Main Street, blood still wet on the seats. People gathered, shouting at Sheriff Carter, "Do something." A woman yelled. Sarah and Emily heard the news from Clara, who came over crying. "They're gone." Sarah, Pete, and Greg. Emily hugged her mom, tears in her eyes. "He's not stopping," Sarah said. She called Mark, who was at the scene. "We need more people," she told him. "We hunt him tonight." That night, the group met again, now with 10 more townsfolk, men and women with hunting rifles, kitchen knives, even baseball bats. They stood in the community center, A drafty building with old posters on the walls. Mark gave out radios, stay in groups, checking every 30 minutes. Sarah held her shotgun, Emily by her side with a flashlight. They drove to the park where the bodies were found. The air smelled of wet grass and blood. Sarah's group searched the trees, flashlights cutting through the dark. Clara's group checked the streets nearby. Nothing. Hours passed, and people got tired. Some went home, muttering about wasting time. Then, a scream came from the park. Lisa, the diner worker, was alone, checking a trail. The killer stepped from behind a tree, knife gleaming. She swung her bat, but he grabbed it, snapping her wrist. She screamed again, falling. The knife went into her stomach, then her chest. Blood soaked her jacket. He left her there, body slumped against a bench. Clara's group found her, and someone vomited. Sarah ran over, heart pounding. "He's here," she whispered. The group tightened their circle, weapons ready. But the killer was gone again. The radios crackled with panic. Oakwood wasn't sleeping anymore. Oakwood was unraveling. After Lisa's body was found in the park, the town's fear turned to anger. By noon, people were outside, yelling in the streets. Sarah Thompson and Emily stood on their porch, watching neighbors argue. Some wanted to leave town, others wanted to fight. Sarah's shotgun was heavy in her hands. "We can't run," she told Emily. "He'll find us anywhere." Emily nodded, clutching a kitchen knife. She believed her mom now. Deputy Mark called another meeting at the community center. The room was packed, standing room only. People brought weapons, hunting rifles, crowbars, even a pitchfork. Mark stood on a chair. "We're organizing a hunt tonight. Every street, every corner. We in this." Clara, still shaken from finding Lisa, spoke up. "He's the fast. He knows where we are." A man shouted, "Then we get him first." The room cheered. But it was messy, unorganized. Sarah whispered to Emily, "They're scared. That makes them dangerous." That afternoon, Sarah and Emily helped Mark hand out maps and radios. The plan was simple, groups of 5, patrolling different areas. Sarah's group included Emily, Mark, Clara, and a guy named Ray, who owned the gas station. They got the downtown area, near the diner and shops. The day dragged on with boring tasks, checking batteries, filling gas cans, eating sandwiches from the diner. By dusk, the town was ready, or as ready as it could be. The first attack came at 8 p.m. A group of 5 was checking an alley behind the pharmacy. The killer stepped out from a dumpster, mask cracked but eyes dark. He stabbed the first man, Dave, in the chest before anyone moved. The knife went in and out, blood splashing the wall. Dave fell, gasping. A woman, Ellen, swung a bat, but the killer grabbed it and stabbed her throat. Blood sprayed her friends. The others ran, screaming into their radios. The killer walked away, leaving the bodies in the alley. The radio crackled at Sarah's side. "He's downtown," a voice shouted. Sarah's group rushed to the alley. They found Dave and Ellen, blood pooling under them. Clara gagged, turning away. "We're too late," Mark said, checking pulses. Sarah gripped her shotgun. "He's close." They spread out, flashlights sweeping the streets. Shops were dark, windows reflecting their lights. Emily stayed close to Sarah, knife ready. Ray muttered about wanting to go home. Mark told him to shut up. At 9:30 p.m., Clara's radio went silent. She had wandered near the old movie theater, checking a side street alone. Sarah's group ran there, hearts pounding. They found Clara by a parked car, her flashlight on the ground. The killer had stabbed her in the back, the knife still in her. Blood dripped down her legs, soaking her shoes. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. Emily screamed, and Sarah pulled her back. Mark shot at a shadow moving away, but it was gone. "Clara, no," Sarah whispered, closing her eyes. Ray vomited in the gutter. The town's mob grew wilder. By 10 p.m., dozens were in the streets, shouting, "Find the bastard." Some fired guns at nothing, breaking windows. Sarah and Emily stuck with Mark, moving to the town square. There, the killer appeared again, standing under a streetlight. His mask was blood-splattered. Knife dripping, the mob charged. A mix of rage and panic. A man swung a tire iron, hitting the killer's arm. The killer slashed back, cutting the man's face open. Blood poured, and he fell screaming. Another woman fired a pistol, grazing the killer's leg. He stumbled but ran, disappearing into an alley. The mob followed, tripping over each other. Shouting that, Sarah pulled Emily behind a car. "Stay low," she said. Mark reloaded his gun, cursing. The mob's radios were a mess of voices, reporting sightings everywhere. The killer was toying with them, moving fast. At midnight, another body was found, a teenager, stabbed in a backyard while sneaking a cigarette. His throat was cut, blood soaking the grass. The mob didn't stop. They kept searching, exhausted, angry, scared. Sarah knew it was building to something worse. She held Emily's hand, the shotgun ready, and waited for the killer's next move. Oakwood streets were a mess of noise and fear after the night's killings. By 1 a.m., the mob had grown to over 50 people, armed with rifles, knives, and tools from their garages. Sarah Thompson, Emily, and Deputy Mark led a group through the town square, their flashlights cutting through the dark, blood from the earlier attacks still stained the pavement. Sarah's shotgun felt heavier with every step. Emily held her knife tightly, staying close. Mark's radio crackled with reports of sightings, but most were false people jumping at shadows. The town was tired, angry, and falling apart. Someone shouted from the edge of town, "He's at the old factory." The factory was a rusted, abandoned building on the outskirts, surrounded by overgrown weeds and broken fences. The mob ran there, their footsteps loud on the empty roads. Sarah's group arrived first, pushing through a creaking metal gate. The factory loomed dark, its windows shattered, machines inside covered in dust. "Stay together," Mark said, his gun drawn. Emily gripped Sarah's arm. "Mom, this feels wrong." Sarah nodded but kept moving. Inside, the air smelled of oil and mold. The mob spread out, flashlights sweeping over old conveyor belts and crates. Footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. Then, a scream to men near the back found a body. A woman from the mob, stabbed through the chest, blood pooling under her. The killer was here. Panic spread, people shouting, tripping over junk. Sarah pulled Emily behind a machine. Mark yelled, "Fan out, find him." But it was too late. The killer moved through the shadows, silent and fast. He stabbed a man in the neck, blood spraying across a rusty pipe. Another woman swung a crowbar, but the killer caught it and slashed her stomach. She fell, screaming, blood soaking her shirt. Sarah's group stuck together, moving deeper into the factory. They heard more screams, 3 more dead, stabbed or throats cut, bodies left where they fell. The mob was shrinking, fear overtaking their anger. Sarah saw a shadow move ahead, the cracked white mask catching a flashlight beam. "There," she shouted. Mark fired, the bullet hitting a wall. The killer ran, his boots heavy on the floor. The mob chased, yelling, their weapons raised. They cornered him in a loading bay, a wide room with a broken skylight letting in moonlight. The killer stood against a wall, knife dripping blood, mask splattered red. His breathing was slow, steady. The mob surrounded him, shouting curses. Sarah stepped forward, shotgun aimed. "It ends now," she said. Emily stayed behind her, knife ready. Mark flanked them, gun raised. A man from the mob charged first, swinging a shovel. The killer dodged and stabbed him in the chest, blood gushing. Another shot fired, hitting the killer's shoulder. He grunted but didn't fall. Sarah fired her shotgun, the blast tearing into the killer's chest. Blood sprayed, and he staggered back. Emily screamed and ran forward, swinging a pipe from the floor. It hit the killer's head, cracking the mask further. He fell to his knees, knife clattering. The mob closed in, a mess of rage. They beat him, pipes, bats, fists, Blood pooled on the floor. Mixing with dirt, someone stabbed him with his own knife again and again. Mark fired another shot into his head. The killer stopped moving, his mask broken, showing a scarred, ordinary face underneath. Just a man, not a monster. But no one recognized him. The mob stood there, panting, blood on their hands and clothes. Sarah dropped her shotgun, her arms shaking. Emily hugged her, sobbing. Mark checked the body. "He's dead," he said. They dragged the body outside and burned it in a pile of old crates. The fire lit up the night, smoke rising over the trees. No one spoke much. The mob went home, stepping over bloodstains, too tired to cheer. Weeks passed. Oakwood tried to go back to normal. Sarah and Emily stayed in their house, locking doors every night. The town fixed broken windows, cleaned blood off streets, and planned a small Halloween festival. Though fewer kids went trick-or-treating, Sarah went back to work at the hospital, checking charts, making coffee. Same as always, Emily taught her classes, grading papers late. Mark patrolled, his face more tired than before. People didn't talk about the killings much. It was too hard.